The first miracle of Jesus. It's his first miracle. Do y'all know where his first miracle was? Donna's shaking her head, yes. Huh?
He turned water into wine.
That is exactly right. That's exactly right. Jesus is starting his mission. He is getting ready. He's the Holy Spirit has come upon him like a dove. He's been baptized by John. He's been filled with the Holy Spirit. He's choosing his boys. He's getting his gang together. He's getting his team together. But he's already committed to a wedding. I didn't know that these weddings that he went to were planned like maybe a year to 2 years in advance. And these were a big deal. These weddings were a big deal. The whole town turned out. And he had already committed. Him and his mom had already committed to go. And so this is how the story goes. This is what happened. The next day, Jesus' mother was a guest at a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother spoke to him about the problem. They have no more wine, she told him. How does that concern you and me? My time has not yet come. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you. 6 stone water pots were standing there. They were used for Jewish ceremonial purposes and held 20 to 30 gallons each. Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. When the jars had been filled to the brim, he said, dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies. So they followed his instructions. When the masters of the ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over and says, usually a host serves the best wine first. Then when everyone is full and doesn't care, they bring out the least expensive wines, but you have kept the best for now. The miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was Jesus' first display of his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And after the wedding, he went to Capernaum for a few days with his mother and his brothers and his disciples. I looked at this originally. I looked at this, and I thought, well, okay, they've gone to a wedding. And what I had taken away from it, for me, the big takeaway was that I thought about last week. If you were here last week, we talked about mothers last week, and we talked about a mother from Nain. She was a single mom, lost her husband. Now she's lost her son, and she's headed to a funeral to bury her son. But she's met by Jesus along the way. She is being followed by a group of mourners. Jesus is being followed by his followers, and they come together at this place. They meet. And Jesus, seeing these broken hearts, tells the woman to stop crying. And then he touches the casket, and the boy raises up and starts talking to the people around him. And then it says, and Jesus gave the woman back her son. Y'all remember that? And I thought, well, we continue on talking about moms. We had this mom, and now we got this mom. You notice in here that it says the woman, that was Jesus' mother. It didn't call her by name any more than it did the woman from Nain. It just says a woman. It was Jesus' mother. They'd gone to a wedding. You don't really, I guess, you don't think too much about Jesus going to a party. They were drinking wine. They were getting drunk. Yeah, they were getting drunk. They had the intentions of getting drunk, and they had run out of wine, and they done got down to the bad wine, and somebody want to cut their phone off. Thanks. They really want to talk to you. Tell them that you're at church on Sunday morning at this time. Better yet, maybe I should talk to them. Would you like for me to do that? I would be glad to do that. I would love to invite them to church. Oh, me. But back to where we were at. They've gone to a wedding. And this I found last night. Some it says woman. He says, woman, my time hasn't come. Woman, what is this concern of mine? Why should I be concerned? And from what I saw last night, this one scholar said that this was a misinterpretation. What he actually said was, my good lady. He referred to his mother as my good lady. And he said, why is this a concern of mine? Because where he was in the guest list, the pecking order that he was in, he wouldn't have been worried about wine. That was not his responsibility. He wasn't that big a player in the wedding list to where he needed to be worried about wine. But she turns and she says, turns to his servant and says, do whatever he tells you to do. And when I originally looked at this, I thought, this is where the message is at. Jesus' mother is telling his disciples, his servants, to do whatever he tells you to do. And I thought, well, there you go. There it is. That's our message. We are his disciples. This happened roughly 2,000 years ago. And here we are, and we're talking about it. And it is for us. This story is for us. And for all the disciples in between, all the disciples before, and all the ones behind us. And if you look over, and you look in Luke chapter 6, 46, it says, and this is what Jesus, this is all red letter, it's all Jesus. So why do you call me Lord when you won't obey me? I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, then obeys me. It is like a person who builds a house on a strong foundation laid upon the underlying rock. Now, a foundation laid upon a solid rock. It don't get much stronger than that. I had a house built and they went down 3 feet. The earth had been disturbed. They felt like they needed to go down 3 feet. We put all this concrete and iron and stuff in there, trying to get a solid foundation. Some places we actually put more than that. One place we put nearly 5 feet of concrete, trying to get a firm foundation. And Jesus says that with him, it's like building a foundation on a solid rock. And when the flood waters rise and break against the house, it stands firm because it is well built. But anyone who listens and doesn't obey is like a person who builds a house without a foundation. It's not built, not a foundation not built on a rock, but building a house without a foundation. That ain't going to work. Any of y'all have ever built a house or been involved in building a barn or whatever knows that you've got to have a foundation for the building to sit on. It's not going to last if you don't. And when the floods sweep down against the house, it will crumble in a heap of ruins. I thought, there it is. There's the message. Jesus' mother has told us to listen to Jesus and what he tells us. And this is what he tells us. Okay? And I just thought, well, okay. Yeah, that's a good lesson. That's a good lesson. We all need to not only listen to what Jesus tells us, but do what he says. See? If we don't do what he says, then we're wasting our time. It's like I think refers to looking in the mirror, and then you turn away from the mirror and you forget what you look like. But I found more, and this is the part that I can't wait to tell you, because I didn't know this. Some of y'all may know this. It's really cool. I'm excited. I looked at some more commentaries, and I'd wondered, you have to really mine the scriptures. If you want all the treasure, you have to mine it. I never thought about the stone jars and their significance to the stone jars. There were 6 stone jars, and those 6 stone jars held 20 to 30 gallons each. And he had told the servants, he said, go get the stone jars and fill them up with water. And they did. And they brought it back, and then he told them, he said, take some, fill them to the brim, and take some and give it to the master of ceremonies. Well, this was a wedding conducted by Pharisees. This was Pharisees. It's kind of like, we're like Methodist or whatever. Okay. And the guy who had probably been in charge would have been the Pharisee rabbi. The Pharisee rabbi would have been in charge. And those 6 stone jars were for ceremonial cleaning. Like you had to wash your hands, or you're going to sprinkle it, or you're going to clean things up. You got to have this sanctified water. You got to have this Pharisee sanctified water to do that. And they know that because they were stone jars. They couldn't use the water in a clay jar because it would absorb what was in it. But the stone, they thought, wouldn't. So these stone jars have been sanctified, and they're being used for cleansing. And Jesus tells them to go get those stone jars. Those stone jars are to be only used for water. They're not to be used for wine. But Jesus told them to go get them. And they got them. And then he told them to take a glass, a mug, or whatever out of one of them and take it to the master of ceremonies, who would have been the rabbi. But the rabbi didn't know where the wine came from. It was just gave to him. No one knew where this wine came from except for the servants who were involved in it. And then the master of ceremony takes a drink, and then he turns to the bridegroom and he goes, what kind of party is this? What kind of party is this where, you bring out the best wine last? Everybody else brings out the good first, and then everybody gets drunk, and then they start serving up the Thunderbird and the Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. They start bringing out that cheap stuff, Cold Bear, that $1.50 bottle wine. And nobody cares because they're drunk. But what kind of party is this where you brought out the very best for last? This was Jesus' first miracle, but it was also, one man put it as the first judgment against the religious Pharisees, the religious, because he had taken these vessels that would only have water for cleansing, and Jesus took that and said, you know what? That's okay. But I'm going to put something in there that really does the cleansing. I'm going to put some wine in there. You know what wine is symbolic of? The blood. Symbolic of blood. Remember the wine press? Remember the wine mentioned the wine press? The wine press was a place of judgment, of punishment. And the cross was looked upon as the wine press. The wine, the juice of the grape, is the blood of the grape. And when it's crushed, that blood comes out. The juice of the grape comes out. If you remember, the first miracle of Moses was he turned the Nile River. He turned water into blood. Remember that? And trying to release the Israelites from Egypt, one of the first thing that he did to show God's power, God gave Moses the power to turn the Nile River, into blood. And it killed everything in it. Remember that? But here we are now. 1,400 years. I looked that up this morning. 1,400 years later, Jesus has taken this water that the Pharisees thought had the power to cleanse. They were all about rules and all about laws. The jars were special. The water was special. And now Jesus is taking what they thought was so special, he turned it into wine. And then gives it to the wedding party. And he gives them somewhere between 120 to 180 gallons of wine, of this great wine. And if you figure it up into bottles, it's somewhere between 600 plus to 900 plus bottles of wine. So not only did he give them a great wine, but he also gave them so much that running out would never be an issue. They would have plenty. That was not an issue. Y'all can celebrate and have all the joy that you want because you're not going to run out of wine. Not going to run out. Jesus was pointing toward himself, but he didn't say anything. He didn't take the credit of changing it, but he did it, and no one understood what was going on except his people, his disciples. The servants knew what happened. His disciples knew what happened. They understood the significance of these jars and of the water. They understood the significance of what Jesus had done and the power that he had to do that. And it says, and they believed. See, it was for the disciples. He did this for the disciples. He saved the party. He saved the party. He got the bridegroom and his family out of a bind. And the party continued. And everybody had a good time. And Jesus changed the play and left and went back home. That's what he says. Capernaum was his home. That was his home base. He went home. He didn't stand up and say, "Hey, y'all like that wine? Is that some good stuff? I made that just a minute ago. I used the high priest's jars over there and made it. Y'all like it? I'm Jesus." He didn't do that. He made it and he humbly walked away. And you know what? I think he did it for those disciples. It was his first miracle. This was the very first one. He did it for his disciples to show them, this is who I am. This is what I am. And he did it for us. Here we are 2,000 years later, and we understand. Miles, I wanted to change the last song this morning, but I didn't ask you to. But the song that came to mind after I saw this last night was "Who Can Wash Away My Sin? Nothing but the blood. Nothing but the blood, man. Who can make me whole again? Nothing but." Can we do that? Can we do that, Donna? Huh? 362. Donna's done got it. Nothing but the blood. Let's stand together and sing this last song.